Hello everybody, it's Andy here from the Movement Project, and today I thought I would finally delve into this COVID-19, as from the 12th of March it has been labelled a pandemic. I've been really resisting doing a video on COVID-19. There are so many other great videos and resources online. If you are looking for more details on COVID-19, I'd recommend to go to the NHS website in the UK or other websites like the CDC or the World Health Organization. This is where you should be getting your specific information from. So in this video, I thought I would talk about the effect that COVID-19 seems to have had on us, especially in regards to the spread of misinformation and conspiracy-driven content. There seems to be so much online, and not even just on Facebook or smaller websites, even some big national papers seem to be spreading misinformation. So what I really don't like about some of these groups on Facebook or some of these national papers is that they're really jumping on people's desperation and anxiety, and for one, worsening it, but also they're just trying to get clicks, and they're trying to, by spreading that misinformation, people are thinking, oh, this is a juicy story, I'm going to click on this, and then they start spreading that misinformation, making other people more anxious when they need not to be, especially because a lot of the time when you actually start looking into the story, there is no basis for it, there's no scientific studies that would back up their claims, it's just hearsay most of the time. So we all know that when we're in a state of stress or high emotional anxiety, that we don't make the best decisions. So we've all been there, someone said something that's really upset us, and then we've become very emotionally sort of stressed, and then our friends have told us to just sleep on it, take a day out before you reply with an email or go and speak to them, because a lot of people know that we say things that we don't really mean, or we react ways in that may be a little bit over the top. And the reason for this is that there are sort of different levels to our brain. So the higher part of our brain, called the cortex, is more involved in spatial reasoning, consciousness, abstract thinking, language. And this is the part of the brain that's a little bit more advanced. And then you have another part of the brain called the limbic system. Now the limbic system is more of a primitive part of our brain, so it's more involved in emotion, and it can be really useful in certain situations where we have to rely a little bit more on instinct. So the limbic system also can have an effect on our autonomic nervous system. So the autonomic nervous system will have effects on our heart rate, when we start sweating, and what this is trying to do, it's trying to get us ready for fight or flight. Now, in the current situation of COVID-19, having this fight or flight is not going to be useful. And actually, like I said, what it does, where we're in that state of emotional stress, it causes us to make bad decisions. You only need to look in the news, and everyone is talking about the shortage of toilet paper. Now, this is just baffles me really, that everyone is buying so much up. But I understand that some portions of the population that are more at risk of COVID-19, so these are people elderly, people who suffer with diabetes, respiratory problems, that they might want to buy a few more things to just make sure that they stock up a little bit. But these people that are buying huge amounts of toilet paper, it just doesn't make sense, and it's not governed by logic that they should be doing that, because really all this is doing, it's creating a shortage when there isn't one there. So if everyone just bought toilet paper as usual, there'd be enough to go around, even some surplus. But because people are hoarding so much, it's causing stocks to go, and then people can't get any. So this is it's quite a selfish way of thinking, and I think, like I said, I understand that why people are doing it, and especially now because there is a shortage, then people think, well, other people are buying it, so I'm going to go buy it. But it's just further fueling the problem. So what we all should be doing is following the precautionary steps set out by the NHS. And this is things like making sure we're washing our hands regularly, that when we cough into our elbow, make sure we're not coughing into our hands, because once again, if we cough into our hands and then touch things, this is going to further spread the disease. Also, to make sure that you're self-isolating, so when you're not feeling well, to make sure that you stay at home and you don't come in contact with as least amount of people as possible. Okay, so what I thought I'd do now is go over some of the facts surrounding COVID-19. So these are going to be just some of the main ones. So all I'm trying to do is just show people how these figures have been derived, therefore trying to hopefully reduce people's anxiety surrounding them, because sometimes they can be a little bit confusing. So fact one is a worldwide mortality rate of 3.4%. So what this means that for every 100 people that get COVID-19, 3.4 people will die from this virus. So obviously this sounds really scary because this is quite high. This is a lot higher than the influenza or the seasonal flu that everyone gets every year, but there are some experts that say that this figure is likely to come down over time, and I'll explain why that this is likely to happen. And the reason for this is that if you look at the mortality rate for each country, it does vary country by country, and this is because certain countries test for COVID-19 in different amounts. So in Iran, they seem to be testing just the most severe cases. As a result, the ratios are a lot different than to somewhere else, say in the UK. So if you're only testing a handful of people, and these are people that are worse, then the mortality rate is going to be a lot higher, which is what you find in Iran. But then if you go to somewhere like the UK, we are starting to test a lot more people that are just symptomatic. As a result, our mortality rate is a lot lower. So as time goes on and the NHS and other health organisations start testing a lot more people, it is likely that then the mortality rate will start coming down, just because of the amount of people that have been tested and testing positive. And we know this because a lot of people that are tested show little symptoms and don't have any serious adverse effects. So this then leads on to fact 2. So fact 2 is that 80% of, or roughly 80% of the population will only suffer mild to moderate disease from COVID-19. So this means that so 80% of people that get it, they're only going to show mild symptoms. So it may be the cough, it may be a fever, but then once their body fights it off, then they're fine and then they recover. So this should bring us some comfort, because as you can see, 80% is a large majority of the population. This doesn't diminish the fact there are people that are going to have adverse effects, but like I said, the majority of people in a statistical sense are going to be okay. So if we think of everyone that's ever been infected with COVID-19 as a little bit like an iceberg, and we see only the ones above the water, so everyone that's been laboratory tested, there's going to be a huge amount of people underneath the water that we never see, never know about, because they show so little symptoms. So then hence why I said that 80% is likely to be higher. So fact 3 is that 40 to 70% of the population as a whole will be infected with COVID-19. So this is a huge portion of the population, but as you can see, there are quite large margins on this statistic. And the person that came up with this statistic is Mark Lipstick. I probably said that completely wrong. I'm not going to keep trying it because I've done it wrong a few times. But he's an epidemiologist, and after he came up with this statistic, he later revised it on Twitter, and he said it's more likely to be between 20 and 60%. So that's a big difference. So if you think between 70 and 20% from the highest and lowest figure that he said. So always worth, when you're seeing these statistics, is take them with a pinch of salt, and realize that later on, as we get more information and more people get tested, that these figures may change. So don't try to get too hung up on these facts. Okay, so once again, my aim for this video is not to belittle or downplay the seriousness of COVID-19. That's definitely not the case. It's just to try to reduce the overall anxiety and fear surrounding it. Because there is so many conspiracies and misinformation being spread, people are getting extremely anxious about this, and this is just not helping the situation. So what I recommend to some people to do is just to make sure you stop checking social media as much. Stop checking also certain websites that they put really sensationalist type titles up, and try to just stick with the main ones I mentioned at the beginning, NHS, CDC and the World Health Organization. This is where you're going to get good information from. And then if you actually read those sources, you probably find that your anxiety levels come down somewhat. So in my opinion, I think we need to be pragmatic. I think we need to be concerned, but not anxious. There is definitely a lot of problems that we're going to be facing with COVID-19. One of those is the amount of intensive care unit beds that we have in the UK, because a lot of people are going to need these beds if they have serious effects from COVID-19. And at the moment, numbers would suggest that we don't have enough of these. This is why it's vital that we slow the spread so the emergency services can cope better. Okay everybody, so I hope you've enjoyed that video. I hope everyone's feeling a little bit less anxious and a little bit more clear on the statistics of COVID-19. So I'll put the survey up here. This would be interesting just to see how people feel about the current COVID-19 and how anxious they are about it. If you have enjoyed the video, remember to like and share. Thanks very much for watching.